everybody, and welcome to Future Salespeople's weekly sales round robin. We're on episode 5, and Mr. Guest and I have cooked up something exceptionally special for you. Today, we're going to be talking about structuring partnerships for success. And I find this topic to be really interesting because ultimately, Alex, over our 20 years combined of startup experience, we probably have some of the most experience in this particular channel in creating and establishing successful partnerships.
Yeah, it's probably true. Partnerships has been a focus for us for a long time. We've built multiple teams, we've scaled multiple teams. So excited to dig into this, especially because it ties right into the Partnership 101 course that we'll be launching here in the next week or so.
I'm super excited. Can't wait for people to see it and provide feedback for it. So shall we go right into it then, my friend?
Let's jump into it. So we like to start these off with a statistic, with a quote, with a case study to help frame things up. And for this one, we have something pretty interesting. So back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Motorola and Cisco actually started a partnership with one another. They bought an arm of Bosch Telecom, with the intent to start their own version of fixed wireless telecom called SpectraPoint. It cost them $300 million to buy Bosch Telecom. They committed to spend $1 billion to launch SpectraPoint. But then only a year later, they shuttered the partnership. And it was because they found out that there was actually no one that they could sell it to. There wasn't a market for what they were looking for. And I think this is a great illustration of partnerships generally and where businesses go wrong from the very start. They buy something, they invest in resources, they hire a person to build a partnership team, and it's really under this banner of if we build it, they will come. They're not doing the research, they're not using their internal teams to establish something small, grow over time. Instead, they think partnerships, that's the thing that I want, and they go after it, they invest too much, and at the end of the day, most partnerships fail. I think you and I agree that it's because people go too far too fast.
I completely agree with that, Alex. And I think it's kind of funny to bring up Field of Dreams reference, right? So it's not every chance that you're going to go ahead and just build a baseball field in the middle of a cornfield and have ghosts come and play. And I think that's very much aligned to this story as well, right? So you can't go ahead and theorize that you're going to have success or create a partnership that's just going to have success because you create it. It goes back to one of our core values of we are scientists. You need a little something more before you start dropping in, $1 billion into a partnership to see if it's going to make sense or work out ultimately.
Yeah, at minimum, you need to have a hypothesis and you need to be able to set up some framework on how all of that's going to tie together. And that could be a good segue into the framework that is an organizational chart. We're going to be talking about organizational charts today, so wanted to create a common language, common definition, give everyone a key on how we think of these things. So ultimately, we do want to see how this entire partnership structure is set up for success, from function through leadership and down into managers, roles, and contributors. But we're going to build this from the ground up. So starting with those managers, those contributors, those roles, when you're building partnerships for the first time, you want to start small and you want to start simple. And when I think of the most simple version of partnerships, I think of co-marketing. And it's a low-cost, easy way to start to dip your toes into the water of what partnerships could provide your organization. Ultimately, when you are building these different partnership teams, they should be teams of contributors that you already have. You don't want to hire people because that's going to add an additional expense. It's going to put pressure on that person to perform. They might not build something that's scalable to your organization. And when you're looking to add those contributors, you want people that have a high level of business acumen. You want somebody that is very competent in their function so they can provide multiple outputs or execute in different ways. And then you can also use this as a way to drive people towards career development, that if they're already excelling at their existing position, you can put this out there as a carrot for them to chase something new in their career.
No, and I really like this. And I like the way that you have a couple things here. Top performer, business acumen, career development. When we're talking about being scientists and to start small, start simple, I also think about crawl, walk, run, right? And if you really want to go out and you really want to test something, you really want to go ahead and test your hypothesis, you probably want to go ahead and put your best foot forward to actually get accurate or relevant data, right? So you don't want to have to go ahead and hire a net new employee who's unfamiliar with your business, unfamiliar with your product, unfamiliar with your buyer or industry to go ahead and test out a hypothesis for you. And so in this sense, the crawl, walk, run, you're going to go ahead and put your best foot forward with people who are already having success. The reward in itself is the new opportunity to advance their career, not new money, not new commitments, not new things you can't claw back and commit financial commitments to your organization, but really a smart and shrewd way to get good, accurate data around if it could be successful or not in your crawl stage.
Yep, absolutely. I think we are very aligned on this one. You need to start small. You need to start with those contributors. You already have them. They might already have some additional bandwidth. The target here is that they are contributing to this floating partnership team, maybe 10 to 20% of their week. And ultimately, it's something that they're doing once they are done with their jobs for the day. You don't want this to be a distraction. You don't want it to be something that they focus on first, because they will. If you don't give them that instruction, they're going to want to play in a space that's new and that's creative and that's different, but they need to understand that they execute their day-to-day job first, and then they contribute to partnerships. And with that, you need to give them a little bit of guidance. So as you're setting up these dynamic teams for different partnership types. And again, you want to start simple. We have solutions partner here to kind of illustrate how you can swap out different players in a leadership capacity or in a contributor capacity. But you want to provide a leader to this team because contributors are typically going to be more junior. And you don't want to have contributors that are junior trying to figure out how to make partnerships work for the first time by themselves. It's going to be really difficult, to your point, Andrew, making something that is a foundation, something that's sustainable and can scale over time. When you're choosing the leadership structure for these floating testing partnership teams, choose the leaders that have the most alignment from a success metric perspective. So if you're doing co-marketing, you want that temporary team, that situational team, to report to maybe the VP of marketing, because the partnership output should be leads and MQLs, and your VP of marketing is producing leads and MQLs. Contrasting that with the solutions partners, you are swapping out, instead of using a marketer, you're going to use a CSM, but the success metrics are more aligned to retention, value, utilization, expansion. So you want to swap out those players and really create dynamic teams that, based on who needs to be the contributors and how success is measured, that's really going to tell you the leader of those teams, at least as you're testing out in the short term.
I love it. Nothing else to add there, Alex. I thought it was well said.
Got everything. All right.
Got everything. I'm blown away.
Yeah, I'll try to leave some.
I'm just going to shut up the rest of the time, make it easy on me. No, I had something really smart and intelligent, but then you just kept stealing all my good bullet points there. Son of a gun.
So finally, when it comes to structures, this is something that's actually probably a little more unique. We don't believe that partnerships should report to any singular function. It can cause some issues in the long run, certainly when you're established enough and you're creating dedicated leaders, managers, and roles for dedicated partner and channel programs. So we believe that partnerships should exist as its own function. If you can't make that work at your organization because you're smaller, because you like to run things more simply, you can put this under operations. And the reason that we give that advice is that you want partnerships to be neutral at your organization as you're structuring this. And you want them to be neutral because partnerships serve the organization. They are helping marketers find new co-marketing opportunities. They're helping salespeople sell faster. They're helping success retain more and provide more value. So if you were to put partnerships underneath sales, that could compete with the marketing team for co-marketing or the success team as it comes to solutions. And then once you have that partnership partner leadership established. You want them collaborating with somebody at a similar level, particularly when there's a shared contributor like we have mapped out here between the VP of partners, the VP of sales, and then a potential salesperson contributor.
It's interesting. You brought up a couple different points out of this too, right? So we've talked about if they can be, let's have them report in a standalone function or partnership function if they can. If not, go ahead and operations. The one thing that we haven't talked about though is the other option, Alex. None of the above.
Other option. None of the above.
None of the above. We had talked about none of the above in our prior conversations. And none of the above would be reporting to a C-suite, would be reporting to somebody else, right? So if for some reason you're talking about simplicity or whatever, right? And it doesn't make sense for them to have their own dedicated channel, doesn't make sense to, actually, never mind, operations could be chief operating officer. I'm an idiot.
Well, not necessarily, but I see your point is that a chief executive, a chief operations, likely if you don't have a dedicated function to operations or you can't provide partnerships, that's where these teams are ultimately going to report up to because it is strategic. It's similar to business development, sometimes corporate development. So you don't want a partnership function that sits singularly under another revenue function because it can cause problems. And even if it doesn't cause problems, your partnerships aren't going to flourish like they should.
Problems that we had talked about previously, conflict, bias, and distraction ultimately coming out of this, right? So if you, as you mentioned earlier, so if you're a partnership team and you're reporting a marketer, they want MQLs, whereas the business may need to focus on retention as an example, right? So you want to have that unbiased perspective, if you will. So I certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it really comes down to it at the end, partnerships are very related in success measures to those different revenue functions, but where they differ is in their purpose, their process, and their execution. So as long as you understand that, you hold that core to setting up partnerships at your organization, you're already setting yourself up for better success than most out there. So coming up next time, we are going to be putting together something on the top 3 reasons that you don't need a full-time VP of sales.
What?
Yeah, you don't need them all the time.
You're kidding me. No, I think that's actually one of the more popular questions that we've been asked as of late too is, do I need a VP of sales? Do I need them full-time? Do I need them just for a season for a particular need? And so we're really excited to get into that content with you next week. Got a couple other things coming out. We got a new video piece coming out later this week. And as you mentioned, we also have our Partnerships 101 dropping either next week or the week after, but certainly before the end of January. So friends, if you're enjoying the comment, please comment, like, and subscribe to the Future Salespeople Sales Channel. We really appreciate your time, your energy, and your passion. Be well.
Thanks, everyone.